It was supposed to be the best morning of my career. I woke up early, ironed my best shirt, and rehearsed my talking points in front of the mirror like a crazy person. Today was the quarterly leadership meeting, the one where my boss had promised I'd finally get some visibility. For weeks, I'd been working on a project that didn't just matter to our team. It mattered to the entire company. New strategy, new numbers, new way of doing things. Late nights, cold coffee, and that familiar glow from the monitor at 1:30 a.m. I'd poured myself into it. My boss knew it. He'd stop by my desk and say things like, "Keep going, this is big. This could be the one that really puts us on the map." Every time he said us, I let myself believe he meant me too. When I walked into the conference room that morning, the air was different. The directors were already there, laptops open, coffee cups in hand, doing that quiet pre-meeting small talk. I took my usual seat on the side, heart racing, laptop ready, USB drive in my pocket with my final version of the deck. Then, my boss walked in, confident, relaxed, smiling like someone who was about to receive an award. He didn't sit in his usual spot. He walked straight to the front of the room, plugged in his laptop, and connected to the big screen. I froze, because the first slide that appeared up there was mine. Same title, same color scheme, same opening line I'd stayed up half the night perfecting. Except there was one tiny detail missing: my name. On his version, the "prepared by" line was gone, like it had never existed. He cleared his throat. "Morning, everyone," he said. "I've been working on a new strategy for us this quarter, and I'm really excited to walk you through what I came up with." What I came up with. My ears rang. I could feel my pulse pounding in my neck. I glanced down at my laptop, then back at the screen, just to be sure I wasn't losing my mind. Slide after slide, he clicked through my work. The analysis of the last 3 quarters, the comparison with our competitors, the risky but calculated move I'd suggested, the one nobody else had been brave enough to put on paper. He presented it all. Numbers, arguments, jokes I'd written into the speaker notes to keep things from getting too dry. Word for word. And every time one of the directors nodded, every time someone said, "That's smart," or "I like where you're going with this," he smiled, like he'd earned it. Halfway through the presentation, the VP leaned forward, clearly impressed. "This is excellent," she said. "Exactly the kind of initiative we've been needing. Great job." He didn't even blink. "Thank you," he replied. No "my team," no "we," no "they've done an amazing job supporting this." Just "thank you." I sat there, invisible, watching my work climb the ladder without me. At the end of the meeting, the VP added one last line. "If this lands the way we think it will, it's going to reflect very well on you at promotion time." On you, not on us. I felt the floor drop out from under me. The meeting ended. Chairs slid back, people stood, stretching, closing laptops, moving on with their day like nothing had happened. My boss clapped me on the shoulder as he walked past. "Great meeting, huh? Let's catch up later." Great meeting. I walked back to my desk in a kind of slow-motion fog. The office looked the same hum of conversations, same tapping keyboards, same ringing phones. But something had shifted. At my desk, the notifications started rolling in. A DM from a coworker. "Hey, wasn't that your project?" Another one. "Pretty sure I've seen that exact deck on your screen for the last month." I stared at the messages, fingers hovering over the keyboard. What was I supposed to say? Yeah, it was mine, but I guess it's his now. I closed the chat window and just sat there, staring at the same slides now sitting on his laptop, now attached to his name, now tied to his promotion. That was the moment it clicked. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't teamwork. This wasn't sharing credit. This was theft. And he'd done it so smoothly, so casually, that he clearly thought I would just take it. Maybe most people would. Smile, stay quiet, hope that next time he'd remember to mention them. But as I sat there, watching my inbox fill up with polite versions of "you just got robbed," a different thought settled in. If he was willing to steal something this big, this publicly, this shamelessly, then this probably wasn't the first time. It might not even be the first time with me. And if I wanted any chance of surviving in that place, let alone growing, I couldn't keep playing by his rules. Not anymore. I didn't know exactly how yet. I didn't have a plan. But I knew one thing. The next move he made was not going to disappear into the carpet. I was going to remember. I was going to write it down. And one day, I was going to make sure someone else saw it too. Because if he wanted to build his career on other people's work, he'd just chosen the wrong person.
After that morning, I stopped treating my job like just work and started treating it like a crime scene. Every project, every email, every small favor he asked for. Because once you've watched your boss steal a promotion in front of you, you stop assuming anything is innocent. The very next week, it happened again. Not as big as the stolen strategy, but clear enough to see the pattern. He stopped by my desk late in the afternoon, coffee in hand, voice casual. "Hey, quick thing," he said. "Leadership wants an update on the rollout from last quarter. Nothing major, just a short summary and some slides. You're close to the data, so you're the best person to do it." I'd heard that line before. You're the best person to do it. What it really meant was, I don't want to do it, but I want credit for it. Even so, I opened a new document and started working. I pulled numbers, spoke with other teams, cleaned the data, built a story that actually made sense. Hours passed. The office slowly emptied. Lights went off in one section after another, until it was just me and the cleaning staff. At 9:47 p.m., I finally sent it. Subject line, rollout update, full draft. A few minutes later, he replied, "Nice, I'll polish it a bit and send it along. Great work." I stared at the word polish. That was his favorite verb. He didn't lead, he polished. The next morning, I checked the shared drive where leadership decks usually ended up. There it was. Rollout update. Final. Sent to execs. Author. My boss. I opened it. He had changed 3 things. A comma, a title, and the font size on one bullet point. Everything else, mine. Including the closing slide where I'd written, "Next steps. Expand the pilot, then gather feedback directly from frontline staff before scaling company-wide." He'd left it exactly as I wrote. It sounded thoughtful, strategic, and now it belonged to him. That day, I didn't get angry, not like before. Instead, I got very, very calm, because this time I had prepared for it. Before sending him the draft, I exported a PDF and emailed it to my personal account. Same timestamp, same content. No paranoia, no hacking, just a backup. A record that I had created the work before his final version existed. From then on, every time he asked me for something big, I did the same. Finished file, internal send, personal copy. He thought I was just being efficient. I was actually building a timeline. Meanwhile, his behavior outside our little bubble started to crack too. In one cross-functional meeting, he tried to sell a new process as his idea, except he hadn't realized the original email chain proposing it had half the department on copy, and my name at the top. Someone from another team spoke up. "Oh, that's the thing my name suggested a while back, right? I remember that email." The room went quiet for a half-second. He forced a laugh. "Well, yeah, the team had some thoughts and I've been shaping it into a full plan." It sounded harmless. To most people, it probably was. But I watched his face. the way his eyes narrowed for a split second. He didn't like that, not at all. Because for the first time, someone had unintentionally peeled a little bit of his image away. The more I paid attention, the more I noticed the pattern. In small rooms, he talked about we. In big rooms, he talked about I. In trouble, he talked about they. And they often meant me. If a deadline moved or a metric dipped, he'd say things like, "We had a bit of a delay because someone misinterpreted the initial brief, but we're back on track now." No name, but the implication was clear. It was subtle enough to sound harmless, but consistent enough to damage my reputation over time. If I didn't do something about it. So I did. Not by confronting him, but by changing my behavior everywhere else. In cross-team chats, when someone thanked him for work I'd done, I'd reply, "Happy to help, it was a fun project to work on," and add a screenshot or a file link I'd created. Not aggressive, not confrontational, just undeniable. In stand-ups, when he said, "I'm working on the proposal for X," I'd jump in and calmly clarify, "I'll have the draft ready by Thursday so you can review it before sending." Little things, small corrections, but they added up. People started to associate the details with me, the data, the writing, the structure, and his role more of a filter than a creator. And then came the moment I knew the ground under his feet was finally starting to shake. We had a department-wide town hall, the kind where upper leadership showcases star projects from different teams. My boss was asked to share the big strategy presentation, the same one he'd stolen from me. He stood up, walked to the front, and started talking through it again, proud and in command. But this time, midway through, the VP interrupted him. "I've been hearing your team has been doing great work on this. Who actually pulled all these pieces together?" It was a simple question, probably innocent. To me, it felt like a spotlight swinging across the room. For a split second, he hesitated. A fraction of a second, but enough to see the calculation happening behind his eyes. Then he smiled and said, "Well, of course, the whole team contributed, but my name did a lot of the heavy lifting." The room turned. Eyes landed on me. It wasn't the full truth, not even close, but it was the first time he'd been forced to publicly attach my name to something he'd been trying to own alone. And the only reason he did it was because he realized something. People were starting to notice the gap between the genius he claimed to be and the quiet work other people did in the background. His mask hadn't fallen yet. It had slipped. And once that happens, it never sits quite the same way again. I walked out of that town hall with a strange feeling. Not victory, not yet, but something better than anger. Leverage. Because now I knew two things for sure. He was willing to use me as a stepping stone, and he was suddenly aware that I could pull that stone out from under him. All I needed was the right opportunity. Something big enough that leadership would have to look closely, and long enough that I could build a rock-solid case behind the scenes. And that opportunity arrived in the form of one email. Subject line, "Strategic Initiative, Need a Strong Owner." The email landed in my inbox late on a Wednesday afternoon. I was halfway through cleaning up a messy spreadsheet when the notification popped up. Subject, "Strategic Initiative, Need a Strong Owner." It was from my boss. For a moment, my stomach tightened. Every time he said "strong owner," what he usually meant was, "do all the work so I can present it later." Still, I opened it. "Leadership wants us to lead a new cross-department initiative next quarter. Lots of visibility on this one. You're the best person to run point on the execution side. I'll handle the high-level stuff. Let's talk." There it was again. Execution for me, glory for him. But this time, something was different. The email wasn't just sent to me, it was CC'd to his manager, and to someone from HR who worked closely with leadership on talent development, which meant two things. Leadership already knew I'd be involved, and there'd be a paper trail from day one. This wasn't just another internal favor. This was a company-wide initiative with eyes on it. Exactly the kind of project promotions are built on. Exactly the kind of project my boss loved to hijack. And exactly the kind of project I could finally use to prove what was really happening. We sat down in a small meeting room later that day. He closed the door, leaned back, and smiled like we were partners in crime. "This is big," he said. "If we nail this, it'll put our whole team on the map." Our team. "Here's how I see it," he continued. "You do the groundwork, research, stakeholder interviews, initial strategy. I'll take care of positioning it with leadership. They trust me, so it's better if the message comes from me." "Okay," I nodded slowly. "But if I'm leading the work, I want to be in the room when it's presented." For a second, the smile on his face twitched. Then he recovered. Sure. We'll see how much time we have on the agenda when we're closer." Which was his way of saying, "I'll try to keep you out if I can." Fine. If he wanted to play that game, I'd just make sure that by the time we were closer, pushing me out would look suspicious. The project kicked off the next week. It wasn't small. We were tasked with designing a new process that would affect multiple departments: sales, operations, customer support, finance. That meant interviews, workshops, surveys, digging into systems that hadn't been touched.
When the calendar invite hit my inbox, I opened it with my heart already racing. This was it. The big presentation. The one that would decide not just the fate of the project, but the story of who actually led it. Presenter, my boss. Required attendees, senior leadership, cross-department heads, and me. I read my own name twice just to be sure. For the first time, I wasn't an optional guest tagged at the last minute. I was built into the meeting from the start. A few minutes later, my boss appeared at my desk, fake casual. "Hey, saw you on the invite," he said. "Leadership must want you there for support, which is great. I'll walk them through the big picture, and if they have detailed questions, I'll throw it over to you." Support. Like I was tech assistance for the project I'd been living and breathing for months. I just smiled. "Sounds good. I'll be ready." He had no idea how ready I was. Because in the days leading up to that meeting, I wasn't just fine-tuning slides. I was making sure the story of the project was airtight, in emails, in documents, in the minds of the people who'd been working with me directly. I sent final recaps to each department we'd interviewed. Here's the summary of what we've included based on our conversations. Not what he included, what we had built together. Every one of those emails started with, "As you know, I've been leading the groundwork on this initiative." Not arrogant, not bragging, just factual. The day of the presentation, I arrived early, too early probably. I sat in the conference room while it was still half empty, watching the screen blink "No input detected," listening to my own heartbeat. My boss walked in a few minutes later, laptop under his arm, that familiar "I'm in control" smile on his face. "Don't be nervous," he said. "This is going to be great." He said it like he was reassuring me about his big moment. People trickled in, the room filled, laptops opened, chairs squeaked. Finally, the senior leader I'd met with one-on-one walked in, nodded at me, and took a seat near the front. That tiny nod was all I needed. My boss plugged in his laptop. The first slide appeared. Title of the initiative: big, bold, impressive. No names. He cleared his throat. "Thanks, everyone, for coming. I'm excited to walk you through the new process I've been working on." I've been working on. I felt my jaw tighten, but I stayed quiet. He clicked to the next slide, then the next. Overview, objectives, timeline. all the structure I'd created, all the phrasing I recognized. Then he got to the heart of it, the part that came from weeks of talking to people on the ground. After extensive interviews with the teams involved, he said, we identified 3 main pain points. He caught himself then, just for a split second, because out of the corner of his eye, he saw the senior leader glance at me. We. He emphasized the word this time. We identified 3 main pain points. He continued, summarizing the issues one by one: bottlenecks, miscommunication, redundant steps. Everything I'd heard firsthand. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. A hand went up near the front of the room. The senior leader I'd briefed earlier. This is all great, she said. I'd love to hear more about how the teams on the ground responded to these ideas. Since my name has been working so closely with them, could you walk us through some of that? She was looking at me, not him. For a fraction of a second, the room froze. My boss's smile stiffened. Then, with no graceful way out, he gestured toward me. Yeah, sure. My name? Do you want to add some color here? Do I? I stood up slowly, walked to the front of the room, and took the laser pointer from his hand. The screen was filled with the flowchart I'd designed. I didn't look at him. I looked at them. Over the last several weeks, I've had one-on-one conversations with representatives from every department affected by this change. I saw a few heads nod. People remembered those calls. They remembered my face. As we dug into the day-to-day reality of their work, 3 patterns kept coming up. I pointed to each pain point, telling short, specific stories. The support rep who had to enter the same data into 2 separate systems. The sales lead who lost deals because they had to wait for approval stuck in limbo. The operations manager who had built their own unofficial workaround it just to survive. I quoted them, not from memory, from actual notes. This isn't just a process problem, it's a trust problem. People stop believing leadership will fix things when they have to build secret systems just to get work done. The room was silent. Not the bored kind of silence, the listening kind. Then I walked them through the solution, step by step. How the new process would remove duplication, where automation could save time, how we'd measure impact over the first 90 days. I wasn't reading off the slide. I was explaining something I knew inside and out, because I'd built it. When I finished, I didn't rush back to my seat. I stayed at the front, hands steady, laser pointer still in my fingers. My boss forced a chuckle. Yeah, so as you can see, we've given this a lot of thought. But the room had shifted. People weren't looking at him anymore when they said things like, "This is really well thought out. How long have you been working on this? Who came up with that phased rollout idea?" They were looking at me. I answered honestly, not performing, not overselling, just walking them through what I actually did. My boss kept trying to wedge himself back into the narrative. We talked a lot about when I asked him to explore, but it was too late. The more he tried to reclaim the spotlight, the more obvious it became that he hadn't actually been the one in the weeds. By the end of the meeting, leadership was already talking next steps. "This looks strong," the VP said. "Let's move forward with the pilot. My name, I want you to be the main point of contact as we roll this out. You clearly have the deepest understanding of how this all fits together." Main point of contact, not assistant, not support. I saw my boss's expression crack for just a moment. If this project succeeded, and it would, everyone in that room now knew exactly who to associate it with. We left the conference room in a messy wave of side conversations. People stopped me in the hall to ask follow-up questions. "Great work in there. This is going to make a real difference. Shoot me the deck when you get a chance." To me, not through him. Later that afternoon, he called me into his office. Door closed. His smile was gone. "Look," he said, "I feel like you kind of blindsided me in there." I blinked. "How?" "You made it sound like you did everything," he said. "You know I've been managing this from the top." I held his gaze. "I walked them through the parts I worked on. You asked me to lead the groundwork. That's what I talked about." He didn't like that answer.
Not at all. For the first time since I'd known him, he dropped the cool boss act. His voice got colder. Just remember who decides your performance review. There it was. The threat. Not even subtle. I nodded slowly. Yeah, I said, and I'm sure they'll be very interested in the actual performance. He had no comeback for that, because he knew something he hadn't fully admitted to himself yet. The story was no longer his to control. Leadership had seen me. Stakeholders had worked with me. He couldn't rewrite this one. He could try to make my life uncomfortable, sure, delay approvals, nitpick my work, play petty games, but the damage to his image, that had already started, and the final blow was still coming. For a while after that presentation, he tried to pretend nothing had changed. On the surface, our routines were the same. Same stand-ups, same reports, same gotta-sack pings on chat. But underneath, the balance had shifted. People now came directly to me with questions about the initiative. When leadership wanted updates, they emailed me and CC'd him, not the other way around. And every time someone said, "Hey, great work on that project," there was no confusion about who they meant. He hated it. You could see it in the small things. Suddenly, he started nitpicking everything I did. "Can you change the wording on slide 7? This chart isn't sharp enough. This email sounds a little too strong. Maybe tone it down." Not because it needed improvement, because he needed to remind himself that he still had some control left. Then came performance review season. The same process as before. Forms, self-evaluations, calibration meetings behind closed doors. Except this time, there was a key difference. I had receipts. In my self-review, I didn't brag or exaggerate. I just laid out the facts. Led stakeholder interviews across 4 departments, designed and implemented the new process, served as main point of contact during the pilot, presented key sections of the strategy to leadership and answered detailed questions. For each point, I referenced meeting invites, emails, documents with my name on them. It wasn't emotional, it was documented. The day of the review, I walked into the room ready for anything. He started with small talk, trying to set the tone. Then he pulled up the form. "So, overall, you've had a solid year." Solid. That word again. I waited. "With the initiative, you did a good job executing," he continued, "but I think there's still